So with me is Vaseem Khan. Vaseem is the author of two award-winning crime series set in India. He's about to be part of the Bond franchise and has very recently relinquished being chair of the Crime Writers Association. And with all that in mind, Vaseem, I want to know how you got into this genre.
Well, I guess I fell in love with crime fiction through Christie, and that was when I was younger and I was watching the fabulous Poirot series starring David Suchet. And I used to watch the series with my late father, who had a mustache very much resembling David Suchet's mustache. And I guess that was my entry point into crime fiction. And it took me another 2 decades to actually be published in the genre.
She clearly had an influence at that stage. As you've gone on and you've obviously written all these books, how much of an influence does she still have on your work?
Well, we seem to be having a resurgence over the last decade or so in what people are calling cozy crime. But cozy crime is really just another iteration of golden age crime fiction because essentially the swearing, the sex, and the bloodletting are off stage, and it's focused on the puzzle and the characters and the setting that people dip into these books for. And that's the kind of space that I'm writing in, and Christie and her contemporaries pioneered.
So, with that in mind, then, and bearing in mind there is such a vast canon of work, not just for Christie, but obviously other writers too, how do you keep your plots and characters, how do you keep them fresh?
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example. So I lived in India for a decade. I was born and grew up in the UK, but my heritage is from the subcontinent. And one of the series that I write is called the Malabar House novels, beginning with Midnight at Malabar House. And these books are set in 1950s India, just a few years after Indian independence. And they borrow heavily from the kind of things that Christie became known for. So, where the focus is on India's first female police detective, who is attempting to solve these murders in consort with an English forensic scientist named Archie Blackfinch. But those books are much more than murder mysteries. They're also looking at the society that was prevalent at the time, just after independence. And one of Christie's great strengths was being able to look at the fault lines between rich and poor, between the different classes, and that's what I try and do with the Malabar House novels as we move through these murder mysteries.
There's a lot going on there, isn't there? It's not just about the plot and the character. There's quite a lot of background that you're weaving into all about, as Christie has done. With that in mind, do you have a favourite Christie book?
Yeah, for me, it's Death on the Nile. I'm a huge fan of all things Egyptian anyway, but I also like the fact that that particular novel, I mean, spoiler alert, um, it's another one of these amazing confidence tricks that Agatha plays on us. And that's the idea that we have these uh, antagonists at the beginning who appear to be in disharmony, and yet at the end we discover that they're actually working together to commit this particular crime. And Christie was wonderful at at using these sleights of hand to fool us right until the very end of the book. So my next release, which is coming out in October, is Quantum of Menace, and that's the first in a mystery series featuring Q from the Bond franchise. So it's not a spy novel. Q is booted out of MI6, and he's a man at sea, and he decides to return to his very small hometown in the home counties near London to look at the mysterious death of his childhood friend, who's a quantum computer scientist. And again, these books borrow heavily from the style and the ability of Christie to immediately immerse us in the puzzle aspect of a mystery and the journey with the characters. And I liken Q to a sort of modern day version of Poirot in that he has many quirks, but at the end of the day, he's a highly intelligent man who uses his intelligence as the blunt instrument to solve these crimes. I don't think you'll find a crime writer who doesn't suggest that there is at least some influence of Christie on their writing. But for me in particular, because of the style that I write with, which very much borrows from Christie, it means a lot more. And I still remember the first time I came to this festival. Not only did I speak at the festival, but I took the opportunity to go and see Christie's house. And it was a really emotional moment to stand next to her typewriter in her house as a crime writer who'd spent many, many years trying to get published and now, finding a modicum of success, and to say, so much of my inspiration comes from this typewriter. which was obviously wielded by Christie to great effect.